Welcome to episode 24, another edition of Touchstones Music. I'm continuing my series of music and albums from the 1960s, which I purchased around the time they were first released in the 60s, and which will be musical touchstones for me ever since. Now, Leslie West influenced several generations of guitarists with his ultimate hard rock style. This episode, we feature his first solo album, really the album that kicked everything off for West in his career, which paved the way for his later success with bassist Felix Pappalardi in the group Mountain. From 1969, the album titled Mountain. Let's hear a quick clip from Blood of the Sun. Okay, so you don't get too much of his ultimate hard rock guitar there, but you do get some of his excellent blues shouter voice, and some fine bass work there by Pappalardi. So at this point, on record, remember these people hadn't toured yet, they just made a record. Leslie West on guitar and vocals, he was the featured performer. Felix Pappalardi, bass and keyboards, and also the producer. Not shown were N.D. Smart on drums, and Norman Landsberg on organ. They didn't make it into the final touring group Mountain, but they were on this album. Leslie West had made a name for himself locally in the Long Island, New York rock and soul group The Vagrants. After hearing Eric Clapton and Cream, however, West began moving away from R&B and developing a much heavier blues rock style of guitar playing. New York record producer Felix Pappalardi had produced Cream recordings. We've run into him in the past with a couple of albums, such as Disraeli Gears, and agreed to produce and play on West's first solo album. West eventually pitched the idea of forming a band to Pappalardi after they'd made the album. Pappalardi brought in keyboardist Steve Knight from another group he had produced called Devil's Anvil. Corky Lang was eventually tapped as their drummer, and the classic Mountain lineup was in place for touring, but previous to that, they had made this album, which we're reviewing today. It was recorded in July of '69 in New York City, of course, with Pappalardi also doing double duty as a producer. It was released in July. A label was Windfall, and it made number 82 on the Billboard US 200 for albums. I don't know what it did in the UK. I don't think it charted. Now, remember, this was not a high-profile album. It was not a high-profile artist at this time. This was his introduction, so that's probably why it didn't chart higher, but he became a big star after this album. The album title and cover, well, the album title obviously comes from Mountain, and it was meant to be a humorous reference to West's plus-size figure at the time. The band later took their name from the album's title. It just runs right through. Nothing fancy about the cover. West was a new, relatively unknown artist, so there's a front cover photo of West. Rear cover appears to be a rendering of another photo of West, and that was basically it. Sort of bare bones. Not too much money put into this, but certainly paid off in the long run for anybody connected with this artist, because he went on to have a very substantial career. My impressions at the time, well, first of all, I was impressed by West's guitar playing. He had a Clapton-esque style, but with less embellishment. He seemed to have a good grasp of which notes not to play, which is very important for a good guitarist. And he made good use of space in his improvising as well as of dynamics. He had a real feel for dynamics. Secondly, for a heavy rock recording, there are surprisingly a number of variety of song types. There's rockers, yes, but there's also country blues and ballads. West was a blues shouter, but his voice could also be very expressive and nuanced. I like West's voice. So side one of the vinyl, Blood of the Sun, we heard a quick clip from. Long Red, both were West Pappalardi and Friends compositions. Better Watch Out, Pappalardi and his wife and writing partner. Another one by Pappalardi and Collins called Blind Man. And Baby I'm Down, again by Pappalardi and Collins. Let's hear a bit from Long Red, however. This is more of a, what am I going to call it, country blues.
Long red, flowing through my mind, being here, dreaming there, two pieces all the time.
Again, we're not hearing that heavy-duty guitar that I mentioned earlier, but we are hearing Wes, again, very, very expressive blues voice. Side 2, Dreams of Milk and Honey, storyteller and so forth. There's a Dylan composition, which shows that they certainly had good taste. Nothing like having a Dylan composition on one of your albums. But most of them are written by West, Pappalardi, and friends. Let's hear a little bit, however, from Dreams of Milk and Honey.
Sitting in the blue room, staring at the wall.
So that gives you a little hint of what that wonderful guitar tone that West had already developed. This is the album that kick-started the band Mountain. It formed in 1969. The original group lasted until 1972 and consisted of Wes, Pappalardi, Steve Knight on keyboards, and power drummer Corky Lang, as I'd mentioned. Mountain's third or fourth concert was at the famous 1969 Woodstock Festival. They were included on the Woodstock 2 album, as a matter of fact. West was a seminal blues rock guitarist. And while not as well known and remembered by the general public as some of his contemporaries, he is still revered by rock guitarists everywhere. He passed away recently, a couple of years ago. This album has been another of my touchstones since I purchased it. I hope it will be for other music fans as well. And that's all for this edition. As always, until next time, be well and thanks for joining me.